Welcome to history.
First of all, today we are going to be learning about why knights were introduced, when and where they were introduced, and how the armour has changed over time.
After William won the war, the knights and horses came to be a great source of fighting, and they became very powerful over the next hundreds of years. Once the other countries found out about it, they all followed along and did the same. Local lords with knights serving them would offer poor people protection if the poor people worked for them. The poor people didn't have much protection, and this would be a good chance for them. There were different levels that a knight would serve for. They would serve for a local lord, a count or duke, and below the knights were the serfs, who were at the bottom and the lowest power in the feudal system. As time went on, armour got more sophisticated and more steel plates and weight was added. It was made so that people could have protection, but so they could move freely as well. A full suit of armour weighs up to 25 kilos and was evenly spread out over the body. Three main types of soldiers, and the knights were the most powerful and the wealthiest. Only the wealthiest of people could afford to be a knight, as it is very expensive to be a knight back then. They needed armour, weapons, and most of all, a powerful horse. The first knights fought for the Franks, and they became an important part in the army as they were strong, reliable, and powerful. This all happened in the 700s.
And today we are learning about how knights changed society and the factors of knights being so effective.
They were originally Mongols who rode on horseback, which gave them the advantage already with the horse and how fast and strong they were. But they quickly developed into armoured knights that we've seen in pictures, such as the Normans. All knights in medieval times had to be very religious, and they lived as monks, as well as protecting the king. Becoming a knight, you would have to go through 3 stages to become a knight, which were page, squire, knight, and the boys would leave at a very young age to become a knight. In a battle, a big group of knights on horseback would go into battle in a line, so they'd be very close together and very hard to stop or even stay alive, so it would be a very scary sight. They'd lower their lances into attack position to make their final charge on the people they were fighting. To win a battle, the knights of one army usually had to defeat the knight of the other army. The other soldiers tried to protect their own kings. One of the most important battle tactics was the conroys. This was a close formation of knights designed to charge at standing infantry or other cavalry, and was the tank of medieval warfare. Only the brave and disciplined enemy could resist a convoys of fully armoured knights if it did hit its target. However, unlike a modern tank, the convoys could only shoot forwards. If it was attacked from the side or the rear, it was almost helpless. It was so difficult to turn or stop a convoys once it had started to charge, and it was even more difficult to bring the knights back together if they got split up. In fact, the convoys had to deliver a knockout blow or its knights could soon be defeated. Knights were not disciplined soldiers. One Italian writer, Niccolò Machiavelli, said that armies were better off with common foot soldiers. He complained that knights were too interested in chivalry to carry out orders. In the middle of battle, they would seek out rivals and challenge them to a private duel.
This is the third part of our lesson today, and is about how knights were significant to medieval times.
Knights were medieval gentlemen soldiers, usually high-born, raised by a sovereign to privileged military status after training as a page and squire. Originally, knights were attendants or specialized foot soldiers, but the status of knights was elevated around 800 AD. Kings or lords would raise a soldier to a knight by lightly striking the knight's shoulder with the flat of his sword. The knight was given a sword, a pay raise, and, frequently, a plot of land. Most knights were required to be at least 21 years old. Knights were considered elite soldiers in battles, wars, and crusades. But when not in as such situations, they usually acted as law enforcement officers of the local lord's court or that of the queen. The church and the knights were not always allies. After all, a knight's job meant using violence, even though his sword should only be used against enemies of the church. First of all, today we are going to be learning about why knights were introduced. Ow. And this is the third part of our lesson today. It is about how...
No, dumb.
Alright, let's go. Hurry up.
Knights were attendants or specialized foot soldiers, but the status of knights was elevated around 800 AD. Kings or lords would raise a foot soldier to knight by slightly... Oh my...
It's the hat. Helmet boy. Helmet boy.